let's start. Let me first thank you all for taking your time in such an early hour of Irish morning to be with us here in this hangout. We actually call in from Novosibirsk. It's if you take a map of the Eurasia and point your finger right in the center, that's where we are now. We have about 60 plus people right with us. I'll show you afterwards because I have to rotate my computer to show you that. But they are those aspiring entrepreneurs in IT sector and more, sort of trying to learn as much as they can from you. And the first thing, I want to give a quick round of intro for you guys, and just for the sake of reducing feedback, whenever you don't speak, or if you don't use headphones, I think most of you use them, just mute the mic, otherwise the feedback. Oh yeah, that's perfect. All of you use that. So today we have with us, just in the order I see you guys on the screen, we have Conor Stенli. Right, we see him actually right now. He's a partner at Tribal VC based in Dublin, Ireland. We have the next one is David Scanlon. David, if you can wave your hand so we can recognize you. Yay. So this is David. And last but not least, we have William. William McQuillan. This is William. William is a partner in Frontline Ventures, also based in Dublin. And why don't we guys go into first question? And I suggest we take a round on the questions. And I already briefly introduced you, but what is interesting for us is to, in a couple sentences, can you tell us about yourself and the fund or organization you're working in, and what kind of things you are doing for startups? Why don't we start from Conor, because he's again first on my screen.
Sure. I came with sort of an entrepreneurial background, turned VC quite recently. So entrepreneur into angel investor into VC, so took a kind of classic path. And Tribal is a new venture fund in Dublin.
Conor, sorry, can you speak up because I cannot hear you properly.
So coming from an entrepreneurial background in tech and digital, pretty much from when I came out of college, I started my first company, exited that in 2007, and started to do some angel investing with early stage tech companies in Dublin. From there, over the last year or two, I've been working on Tribal, which is a new early stage seed VC in Dublin. And we have launched in the last couple of months with 5 new investments, as well as our kind of previous portfolio. There's 3 of us here in Dublin. Predominantly focused in, we've got a lot of activity locally, so we're predominantly focused in Ireland for the moment. But we do spend quite a bit of time in the US, working with, I suppose, our network in the US and connecting Irish companies into both New York and into Silicon Valley and San Francisco. So that's just a very high-level overview.
Thank you, Conor. David, you're next on the screen, so please.
Okay. So thanks very much, Natalie. David Scanlon here. I work with a government agency called Enterprise Ireland. We are the Innovation and Trade Promotion Development Agency for the Irish state. We're currently working with a portfolio of about 5,000 Irish-controlled companies, active across a lot of different industry sectors. A lot of that obviously will be focused on information technology, ICT, digital content, that kind of space. And we're a big supporter of the Irish startup community. We fund events, we promote the work of accelerators and incubator programs, we run some of our own entrepreneur development programs as well. And we're also a direct investor in startups. So last year we invested in over 150 Irish-controlled startups. So we committed about 33 million euros in funding in 2012. And the kind of companies we're looking to work with are, as I said, it doesn't really matter what sector. A lot of it does tend to be in information technology. But it's really about companies that we believe can achieve scale, and scale that would be of benefit to the Irish economy. So we're looking for companies that can grow in about a 2 to 3 year period to about 10 full-time employees and generating about €1 million in revenue. And then once we put our money into those kind of companies, like what Conor was talking about, we're really about helping those companies grow. Irish companies have got to get outside of Ireland as fast as they can if they're going to achieve any sort of scale. So we put a huge amount of effort into making sure that the management teams have the skills necessary to scale the company, that they've got the focus on maintaining their innovation and their R&D activity. And then we have a huge global presence. We've got about 35 offices outside of Ireland. We have an office in Moscow. We don't yet have an office in Novosibirsk. Maybe we'll work on that.
Yeah, you better work on that.
Yeah. And what we use those offices for is to make sure that when our companies leave Ireland and go into a new market, they're as effective as they can be. And we would use local staff on the ground to help them understand the business culture and to make sure that they've got the contacts and the warm connections that they need to win business in those markets. So that's kind of Enterprise Ireland. As you mentioned, Natalie, I also have a program here in Enterprise Ireland where we work with entrepreneurs who are currently based outside of Ireland and help them understand the opportunity of relocating here. And we have a separate fund for that, and I might talk about that maybe a little while.
That's great. Thank you. William.
Hey everybody, my name is William. I'm a partner at Frontline Ventures. A little bit about my background. It was kind of a mix between finance and entrepreneurship. Originally, I left university. I went to Lehman Brothers, and then they unfortunately went bankrupt. And I joined a startup investment bank called Andre Partners. Kind of went from 3 of us in Starbucks to 70 people in London, New York, and Paris. What I realized doing that was that I loved startups. And so I set up a startup incubator in Berlin, and at the same time, I started running an entrepreneur network called Sandbox in the UK. And was kind of flying back and forth between the two. And during that time, I had my own startup called Osmodo, which was a fashion technology company. They went through a small amount, but it didn't go very large. And we ended up licensing off the software to kind of give our investors a small return. And just as I was kind of stepping away from that, Shay Garvey and Will Prendergast, my 2 partners at Frontline Ventures, approached me about setting up a new venture capital fund in Ireland, and that would be pan-European, and kind of what I'd like to be the third partner based in London. And so that's kind of a quick history of me getting to set up the fund. And Frontline Ventures, Frontline Ventures is a new early-stage venture capital fund. We're investing in both Ireland but also Europe, and we've made 7 investments so far. We do seed and Series A, so that means we can do as little as 100,000, as much as about 1.5 million euros. Like what David and Conor said, we also realize that in Europe, people need to scale their companies globally. The way the software world is going, I should have mentioned, but we're software-only investors, and the way the world of software is going, you need to think globally from day one. It's no longer just about the local markets. And so for us, we also very much focus on expanding our company to an international perspective. Other than that, we have some preferences. We like B2B companies. We like fintech, payments, infrastructure, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys moving to your companies to Europe sometime soon.
Thank you, William. I see John Bradford from TechStars, Managing Director at TechStars, just joined us. You can hear us, I see, but can we hear you? I think there is a lot of noise. No, John, we can't really hear you. I see it's some exciting place you're sitting in, but.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Perfect. So what we're doing right now, we're doing a round of intros, and I did a small intro for you, but Conor, David, and Will just finished these, so you're actually right on time to introduce yourself and tell us more about your organization. But just in the interest of time, just a couple sentences describing who you are, what you do, and what kind of organization TechStars is.
So TechStars is a 13-week accelerator bootcamp. I run the London end of the program, which is the very first international program they have outside of the US. We typically work with 10 teams at a time. We've been doing it now for 7 years. And in my words, not anybody else's, are bloody good at what we do. Typically, teams which participate go on to raise on average just over $1.5 million, and we've now helped over 100 teams over the last 7 years.
That sounds good. And what's the place you're sitting in? You're showing us.
Well, this is not a plug for all of you guys online, but I'm actually sitting in Google Campus today.
Awesome. So you're actually in Google Campus now in London, which looks pretty empty because it's 9 a.m. there. Right.
I did not get here too early in the morning, but I can assure you by the time the call is finished, it will be very noisy.
Well, actually, all kudos go to you because you actually made your way all the way to campus. I don't know where about in London you live, but that's quite a road probably.
No, the reason I'm here actually, interestingly, is because campus is effectively an open platform for other startups. I'm here today with the startups Wise Guys that's based in Estonia. Are running their demo day for London in campus in about 45 minutes time.
Right, so you have about 45 minutes with us. Okay, with no further ado, let me actually go into the first question, and I'll put some oil into the fire. And we also have venture capitalists in Russia, and I hear all these terrible stories about how much money they invest and how much equity they're taking for it. Maybe just in the way you can tell about that, can you briefly tell us about what criteria do you apply to your investment portfolio? And if you do decide to invest, what is your average size of investment for a seed, for example, or an A round, and what kind of stake you are looking for? Again, it's all very general questions, but if you can average somehow, that would be very helpful for guys to understand European kind of venture capitalist scene and the potential of it. Again, Conor, you have the honor to be first on my screen, so you'll go first.
Happy to do it. I think the first thing, it's probably about the connection with the entrepreneur themselves. So it's the people part comes sort of first and foremost. So, Tribal is working, and we like to work with great entrepreneurs, great people, and our network that we're building around. We have a kind of an incubator that we're opening in town, in Dublin as well. So it's really about the people and the size of the market opportunity that they're looking at, and I suppose their knowledge of the market. I think we can find there's a lot of very good product-focused teams here in Dublin. Sometimes you can get a very product-focused team that doesn't really see or doesn't really have a huge sense of the size of the market or a good grasp of the market, in terms of a global scale. So really we're looking for large market opportunities with great teams and great people behind it. And it's about, I think, building that sort of personal connection. So working with people. So we get quite hands-on on teams, the teams that we work with. We get in usually very early into the company, so we're generally the first check into the company. Usually we co-invest alongside Enterprise Ireland or other angels or early stage VCs here in Dublin. Sometimes we go solo if it's particularly early and we think we can take it to a new level. So we're kind of a hybrid of the traditional VC. We're certainly earlier than most. We're probably more hands-on than most in terms of how we do it. So generally how we look at our I suppose, our investment positions in companies, that they have to be a kind of a meaningful ownership position. So that would be anything from sort of 10 up to 20% to 25%. And typical investments around, amounts anything from 150 up to 500k as a first check into a company. So that's the kind of the range and the size and a kind of high level of the criteria.
Thank you, Conor. Thank you. David, we'll go to you, and so I think that this is your chance to talk about Start in Ireland program, because that's what we are mainly interested in.
I'll just maybe give a brief understanding of the way Enterprise Ireland invests as well as the Start in Ireland program. So we're an investor, but we're not your typical investor. We are a government agency, and we're investing the money of the Irish taxpayers. And we also don't have the same sort of goals that a normal VC would. We're quite irrational in one sense, because we're not out to make a profit on our shares. Our aims when we invest in companies that we believe can grow is that they would grow to a size in terms of how many people they employ and in terms of the revenue that they can generate, that they will be of benefit to the Irish economy. So that's our primary goal. Our primary goal is to make sure the companies will grow sustainably, and not that we're going to make a return on our investment. So we have two funds that we're actively investing in, that we made our 157 investments from last year. We have a very early stage fund called our Competitive Start Fund, and that's where we can put a €50,000 check into a company. We can do that by ourselves, we don't have to co-invest in that one. And we take 10% equity, €50,000. And this is for early stage companies to enable them to build a beta product, finish off a beta product, or perhaps hire their first key salesperson in the market or something like that. It's about demonstrating that there's market viability there. We're usually the first money that goes into that company, certainly in the Irish market. It's a competitive call. We run them, within maybe 5 or 6, maybe even 7. We did 7 this year of these calls, and you get about 100 Irish startups or companies that are eligible to become Irish startups applying for these calls, and then usually the top 50 of the applicants will receive the €50,000 investment. And it's quite a fast process. It's certainly a fast process in terms of government timelines. The time taken between the call closing and the winners being announced is a matter of weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And because we're fast like that, we can be agile with the types of calls that we do. So we can do specific calls around different sectors. So we can have a call for gaming companies, we can have a call for maybe engineering companies, we can have a call for particular types of entrepreneurs. So one of the focuses we have is about developing female entrepreneurship and trying to find ambitious women who can lead, high growth startups. So we just closed this week a call for female-led teams. So it allows us to do that kind of chopping and changing of the focus. So that's the Competitive Start Fund. The other fund that we would hire, we would co-invest alongside people like Conor, people like Will, in a larger round, where we're looking to fund a longer runway. So we're looking to fund something that takes the company not just to 6 months, but maybe to the next 8, the next 24 months. And we can invest alongside a number of different people. It can be the promoters of the money, it can be VCs, it can be angel seeds. They don't necessarily have to be Irish. And we can typically invest in a range between about 150,000 up to €1 million. The average is somewhere between 200 and 250,000. Typically when we invest using what looks like a convertible loan note. So we would expect the money will be repaid after about 5 years. We have the option to convert that loan into shares, into ordinary equity, under a variety of different circumstances. Usually if the company is about to be sold or they do a further fundraise, then we have the option to convert. And then there's lots of sort of conditions around when we convert and how we convert. But we do so in a way that's always favouring the entrepreneur. We make sure that the terms are very heavily stacked towards the entrepreneur. We discount very heavily on any conversion. We don't take any board seats, so we have no rights in the company whatsoever. So we're really just about trying to get that capital into the company to allow them to scale. We'll step back, and then if the company needs our support and assistance, then the closer they can stay to us, the better, because we'll understand more about what they're trying to do. So that's kind of our two funds in the way that we invest.
Thank you, David. Just a small sanity check before we proceed further, because we have a lot of people actually listen it via translation. How's it going, guys? Do you actually understand what she is translating to you? Just thumbs up if you do. Okay, thumbs down if you don't. Yeah, I can actually. Well, so you can be sure that I'm not pretending I'm sitting here alone. Let me actually show you the guys. I mean, just let's do a quick break, and I'll show you the guys. So you believe me that I'm not actually the only fella sitting here, taking all your secrets for that. Just a second, I'll put the mic down. Can you see actually us? Yeah, they can see us. If you wave, guys, you can see. Yeah, that's it. We lost you, but we'll be there in a minute. Yeah. So it's just because I was rotating the screen, it's disconnected a bit, and we actually lost contact with you. So just for the translation purpose, it looks like, not to offend our perfect translator, I cannot see her, but if you can slow it down a bit, I think it will be easier for her to translate and for people to understand. I assume we speak too fast for guys to comprehend that. So with that, John.
I think that's an Irish thing, not a Russian thing.
We don't speak about that, John, here. Well, actually, you're Irish too, so you should, or you're from Northern Ireland. You don't consider yourself Irish.
Actually, I do consider myself Irish. So, Simply, you've managed to get a totally Irish panel from lots of different parts of the world. So the short and easy answer, from our standpoint, is we work around fixed terms. We invest around about $120,000 and it's a combination of a small equity stake, which is 6%, plus a convertible note. But clearly, one of the big value adds that we have, which is slightly different, is people get to participate in a 13-week boot camp here in London itself. There's no additional cost for the entrepreneurs at that point in time. And we actually, interestingly, work quite a lot with other investors in the same breath. So typically, we're very fortunate because we get some really good teams. About half of the teams which come into the program already have raised money from typically angel investors as well.
Are you looking for international startups?
Oh yes. So the shameless plug is that we are actually currently open for applications through to the end of the 31st of December. Typically, over half of our teams come from overseas. Last time out, we had teams from Serbia, and I know the US programs have also accepted. We've also had a Russian team through from called Trading View, who've done exceptionally well. They're a 20-person team. They've previously done a lot of interesting things and are now looking to open an American office.
So do you have any Russian teams so far?
So in London, no, but the US programs have had Russian teams as well.
So here, guys, there are no Russian programs yet. Russian guys still on London program. Be brave for one.
And the last part of the plug is, if you participate in TechStars London, we can ensure that at least 2, potentially 3 founders get 3-year work visas to participate to work out of London.
Right, so actually assist them on the move. I think the same situation with Start in Ireland. They also do some paperwork for people to come in. So it's about your idea.
So we have a startup visa as well. It's an Irish government startup visa. It allows entrepreneurs who might potentially become clients of Enterprise Ireland get a 2-year residency for themselves and their families. It's been very successful. We've been running it since maybe April of last year. We haven't had any Russians, but we've had people from not yet. We've had people from all around the world. We've had Indian, Pakistani, Iranian, Canadians, South Africans. So from a very wide variety of places. And what we're looking for, as I said, is people who can potentially become clients of Enterprise Ireland. So it needs to be an innovative startup, usually technology-based, and then each entrepreneur who applies needs to show that they have access to about 75,000 euros of funding available to the company.
So they should have some angel money in the project.
They need to have some angel money or some backing by VCs. You know, it's quite flexible about what that means. They can have that money readily available to them, or sometimes they can have the backing of a VC who will continue to fund them as they grow, and that would go towards the capital requirement that they have. What's interesting and what's different about the Irish visa compared to, say, the UK or compared to the Canadian is that we don't really mind where the money comes from. We're quite flexible about that. If you're looking to apply for a Canadian startup visa or a UK startup visa, sorry John, I have to just put this out there, you have to take funding from a particular set of either Canadian or UK VCs. So they're like a pre-approved list, and that's fine, and it gives the governments there more control, but it's much more difficult then for the
you have to be an approved investor, and TechStars is one of those approved investors.
Oh, that's cool. So you can that.
Nicely done, John. Touche.
Yeah. Will, just why don't we go over to you and you tell us a bit more about yourself. John, there's a bit of feedback going from your side, so if you can mute, that would be cool.
So just in the interest of quickness, I can run through it quickly. What we really look for is entrepreneurs who are incredibly passionate about what they're doing. They're very driven and ambitious to build global companies. I think for us on the entrepreneur side, we want passion, ambition, globally focused, and also incredibly important is people who we think are great leaders who inspire the teams around them. I think one of the most often challenges and problems we see with startup companies is hiring and building out great teams, and we look for people who we believe can do that. And so that's on the team side. On the actual company side, we want to invest in companies that we think can have huge potential to either be global companies or really change the way people think about specific markets. And then on the geography side, as I mentioned earlier, we focus on Europe in our investments, and we do seed and Series A. So as little as kind of 100K, as much as 1.5 million. Kind of the average equity stake we'd have in a company is between 10 and 15% after our first investment. And anything else worth mentioning? Oh, and then a really important thing, I guess. We're very lucky being a VC at the moment in Europe, in that there's an enormous amount of startups and opportunity to invest in. And what we really look for is entrepreneurs and startups that we can add a huge amount of value to. So through our networks and through our experience, because I don't want to just fire a gun and invest in opportunities that might work out themselves. I want to invest in somebody who we can actually have a difference to, and we can actually help that company grow to be a global company.
Thank you. Speaking of ideas, so every startup has an idea, and when they come to you, that would be actually interesting to understand. How do you assess their idea viability? Like, how do you select those good ideas out of the hundreds, maybe thousands you presented on a daily, monthly basis?
So for me, I guess first of all, just on the kind of, so I guess I can give you the almost exact numbers. In the last year, we've seen about 800 companies. Of those companies, roughly about 30% have come through personal contacts, about 20% have come through incubators, 30% have come through our websites, and about another 20% have come through events, startup events. And straight away, we narrowed down a lot there in that people who come through personal contacts do get more attention from us. That's just statistically where we see by far the best companies. After that, it's incubators. In places like TechStars, we give both personal contacts and incubators a lot more time because we just see much higher levels of quality coming through there. And that would be a huge recommendation I would give to any startup is that, don't just, of course you can do this, and some companies that are great companies come through us, but the best advice I would give to startups who are trying to get through the criteria is go through a personal contact or an incubator. I think that adds an enormous amount of value and credibility to you. And then after that, how we select them, once they've kind of gotten through the first few meetings, is it's as simple as once I've heard the idea and met the team, myself and my partners will go out and do due diligence, which usually takes about 2 to 2.5 weeks. And during that time, we'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 calls and meetings with people in that space and sector to try and decide whether we feel this is a good opportunity for us. So it's a quick way on how we decide to go from kind of first to meet someone and then to actually invest.
Thank you, William. John, how about you? How do you assess those ideas coming into you?
So we essentially take a very similar approach. I think probably slightly different from most VCs. Is we come in very early. So one of the things that we're constantly looking for is very passionate clients who are already committed to what they're trying to do. They're building the products. They may have actually got quite a lot done. They may even have launched the product. At such an early stage, The only thing which is actually you have is the team. So therefore we spend an exceptional amount of time concentrating our review of the team itself. And coming back to what William has said, is if we have other parties in the process who have introduced us and they can actually validate that the team is who they say they are, that goes a very, very long way. We're looking for people with high integrity. We're looking for people who are committed to what they're doing, committed to actually helping the hustlers of the world, who really want to make a difference and change the world.
Thank you. Conor, how about you?
Yeah, I think taking the sort of the people part of things has been kind of heavily touched on. So taking the idea concept, it's very rare that we've formed an idea, and there's so much innovation across the world now that it's really the execution of that idea, the initial evidence of execution, and how a company and a team are really thinking about the market itself. So what we would get very excited about is if a team had identified, a particular insertion point into a market. It may not have to be initially very large, but they had a very very good sense of how they can execute and how they can innovate on not just on products but on distribution, on hiring, on team, on people, and that sort of knowing where they could possibly sit in the marketplace if they're a disruptor. And really, it's that early evidence of someone who's thinking very, very, carefully and cleverly, very clever about how to execute an idea and how to actually build it to the next level. So that's, business strategies and business models that we get really excited about are people who can kind of demonstrate that type of thinking early, as opposed to someone who I think is just potentially just looking at an idea, because there is, as some of the guys touched on, there's so much innovation happening in the world. There's probably 10 companies a day graduating out of incubators and accelerators all across the world. So that's just so much innovation happening. So it's really finding the people who can execute the best on those innovative ideas and concepts.
So we just touched on a very interesting topic, teams and founders and what exactly they are doing. I think question goes to all of you, but I'd like David start first answering them. So speaking of teams and founders, what exactly makes those founders makes you invest in those founders rather than others? What are the qualities you're looking in? Is there anything on amount of those founders? Is it 2, 3? What kind of background do they have? Like or you just use your gut feeling when you talk to them?
There's some of it that's gut feeling. We don't really have a hard and fast rule here in Enterprise Ireland. I don't remember any project that we've invested in where it's been a single person. You just don't do that. You don't go into a lone wolf who's passionate about something. I think what you're trying to find is a team that's got a mix of complementary skills. Your flags, your warning flags and your alerts will start going off if you see a team of 3 people coming in and they're all technology people and their background is all focused on the innovation side, be it the engineering or the technology. Because the problem there is that they'll become so passionate and so in love with the innovation and that they forget about the market application part of it. So that's not always a problem. We've seen good projects being built where the initial founders come in and say, our background is the engineering, our background is whatever this part of the innovation is. I think what we would look for in those situations is an awareness among the founders that they've got a gap, and that they're willing to be coached and that they're willing to take new skills into the company. Because if they think they can do everything themselves because they're so good at the innovation, and they won't accept any advice, and they won't even think about the possibility of bringing somebody in who has a better understanding of the market than them, that's a problem. So I think that willingness to listen and that willingness to be flexible is hugely important for us. Otherwise, there's no point in being advisors if no one's going to listen to what you're saying.
All right, thank you. John, do you have thoughts something about that? We can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm playing around to make sure that everybody can hear me. The thing that I think people massively underestimate is how hard it is to do a startup. And it's not unusual for us to see teams apply to TechStars two or three times before they actually get into a program. And a lot of that is to do with trying to see the progress that people have made over a period of time. It's very hard to make a judgment call about a team or an entrepreneur at a point in time, but if you've actually spoken to a team over a series of times, you can start to see the momentum that the team's building and the change that the team's making itself. And so those are sometimes the reasons why VCs sometimes take a little bit longer to make decisions. And I think the point being with startups and entrepreneurs, they have to recognize, and sometimes the answer is it's not a no, it's just a not yet. And they should not necessarily give up. They should actually push through, and actually funding is just an additional part of the process. The core part is building an awesome kick-ass product and business below this. And sometimes you might need to raise money and sometimes you don't. The objective of doing a startup is not necessarily to raise money. The objective of doing a startup is to create a kick-ass business.
That's it. That's very well said. Thank you, John. Will, how about you? What do you think on it?
So I guess I feel like I've touched on it a bit already, and the guys have said a lot. For us, really what we look for in founding teams is, to touch on what David said, we don't invest in single founders. We want to see a core team that can both challenge each other and carry each other during the tough times of doing a startup. We want people who are really passionate about what they do. We want people who are driven and ambitious to build global companies. And then after that, then the core of what we're looking for. After that, having experience and networks in a specific industry is hugely helpful for us, and that's a huge bonus as well. So they're, I guess, the core things in a team that we look for.
Yeah, thank you. I've been to a talk recently, and one of the guys was saying the way they look at the good, successful startup teams is that the ideal kind of approach from their side, they're always looking for three founders. One is like an idea guy, the actual like a product guy who has an amazing idea to build something never thought of, or something much better than it used to be. The second guy is an engineering guy who is actually a technical guru who can put it all into product and do it perfectly well, so the product is awesome. And the third guy, which is last but not least, is probably the most important, is a business guy who actually know how to turn this brilliant idea and execution into business. Would you agree with this approach, or it's not always the true? Conor, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if they're all part of the founding team, that's fine. I think 2 to 3 to 4 founders is probably fine. I think if it gets too big, you're really looking for the leader, you're looking for the CEO in that group. As part of the team, I think one of the other people I think is worth mentioning, we don't see enough in early stage companies, is a design person, someone who's owning the design, the UX, particularly other kind of digital online product. I think that's still in this side, Europe and this side of the world as well. That's an underappreciated and under sought skill within startups. Design is a competitive advantage. It's something that's hugely important. Google will probably invest as much into design as they would in technology. Maybe not, I don't know, but so I think that there are other kind of nuances within the team that we would look for. But I think any team is going to have certain gaps within them. We've yet to come across the perfect team. I think if you can sort of meet certainly a good business guy within and that could be someone in an engineering or technology background who can just adapt themselves to a sort of commercial business sales environment quite well. We've seen that plenty of times. So I don't think it's a one size fits all. It's quite nuanced, I find, with different people. But if the core team is very functional and very dynamic, they're going to hire very well as well, and they're going to bring in those skills and recognize where they need them, and bring them into sort of the core team as well. So, so I think that.
Thank you, Conor. Will, I saw you had something to say about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it also depends on the type of company. You know, if you're investing in a B2B, maybe more enterprise-focused company, then you want to see somebody on that team who's an incredible closer, a great salesperson. If you're investing in more of an infrastructure-style company, you know, you want to see a really incredible technical person, and maybe you can hire the other things around that. But I think obviously it's great to have the perfect team, but you know, as Conor mentioned, that's generally not. I don't know if that ever perfectly exists to have the perfect team. You know, most teams are built around the core founders, and you know, one of the great things about really amazing entrepreneurs is that they're able to hire those great people around them. So I think I would look for that just as much as I would having a perfect team, because companies change so much and people change so much. It's very hard to know that that is a perfect team to build out. You know, whatever you're trying to build out.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, hiring I think is one of the most important probably tasks for startup. Just want to open questions from the floor. Just let me do a quick check if we have any questions from the floor now, and we carry on. Есть ли вопросы от вас, инвесторов? Если есть, можно даже по-русски, я могу перевести и, собственно,
Ну, хотелось бы получить с вами контакты и способы выхода на этих людей, ну, чтобы, соответственно, рассказать о том.
So guys, the question is actually quite straightforward. What's the best way to approach you, and even looking for the contacts? So tell us about how do you want to be approached first, as a consequence of this session, if you want to be, of course.
So maybe I'll start. So we have a dedicated program here. We've got a website called startinireland.com, and it's got all the details of our fund, how to get in contact with us, and we also have a number of case studies of entrepreneurs who started their projects outside of Ireland and relocated into Ireland to take advantage of the ecosystem and the support from us. So startinireland.com, or you can get me on Twitter. It's EI_DScanlon, and that's usually the fastest way to get me.
Thank you, David. John, just because you are second on this startup ladder, accelerator, how to get a hold of you?
So you can be really dull and you can apply through the application process, which I would encourage people to do. But I'll give you a trade secret, which is my name is John, Jon, and I work for TechStars.com.
Yeah, that's a very difficult to integrate.
So I personally am a strong believer in good entrepreneurs or hustlers, and sometimes going down the normal route is not necessarily the best approach to meet somebody. So if somebody can guess my email address, I'm more than happy to answer all of my emails, even if they're very short. So I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to let you guess.
Thank you, John. William, how about you?
So I mentioned I think the best way to get in touch with me is through personal contacts, through an email introduction. One thing I would say is don't try and get in touch with me on Facebook. I don't mind Twitter, I don't mind LinkedIn, but I'm always amazed at people who are trying to I mean, I love having extra friends, but Facebook generally...
Facebook is not for raising funds, right?
Yeah, Facebook I'll ignore you. LinkedIn I might listen to you. Twitter I will reply. But the best and the quickest response you get from me is if someone who I respect emails me and say, William, here's X person or X team you should meet, and then that will always get the fastest response from me, for sure. And our email addresses are on our website. You know, you can send an email. As John said, I always respond to emails. The speed at which I respond to them will depend, you know, on the time of the day and also, you know, who's introducing you as well.
And that's the website is frontline.vc. Thank you. Conor, if you want to be reached, what's the best way?
I think because we're probably focused locally here in Dublin and Ireland, and we do some work with David on EI's front as well. So I would think either a good way to do it is to contact me. Twitter is probably the best means. I'll always respond on Twitter. So at Conor Stan, CONORSTAN. But if you're coming to Dublin, look me up. If you're not not, it's probably an introduction through someone else. But I like to be as helpful as I can to people. If you're raising funds in a market that I'm not familiar with, I don't think I can be helpful to you. So I think if you're coming from Ireland, like coming to Ireland, to Dublin for a trip, certainly happy to meet for coffee, to have a chat, get in touch. I've done this with David a couple of times where I've met some companies that have been visiting Ireland. So that's probably the best way to do it.
I think we lost David. So let me just summarize that. First and foremost, if you guys want to reach venture capitalists, do it via contact. Someone should recommend you, and that's the quickest and easiest way to get some immediate attention. And then the second trend is Twitter apparently is the best tool after the personal connection. And you've been given a couple clues about websites and email addresses you have to remember if you're thinking about that. Let me check for any other questions from the floor.
Давайте, не каждый день 4 человека, у которых есть деньги, с вами хотят поговорить. Они как-то испугали.
So we have a question from the floor directly to you.
Which is the minimal set of information or materials that should be collected to show for one who is seeking investment, and what's the maximum or optimal set of information materials to be presented?
So that's about a number of slides, or what exactly? What's the specific question?
То есть что нужно представить? То есть если я хочу получить инвестиции, да, что я должен представить? То есть достаточно ли, допустим, идеи и вот этих 3 слайдов, да? Или нужно, значит, иметь уже готовый бизнес-план, уже, значит, готовый продукт, уже готовый сайт, то есть что минимально требуется и что требуется оптимально, так сказать, среднем.
So the question, guys, is about material startups should present you in order for you to consider them. First of all, what is that you're looking for? Is it a short deck, like a beta or MVP, or how short or long is the deck should be? What exactly, from your perspective, is the best and quickest way to make you to go through these materials? Maybe first when they reach you via connection or Twitter, and second when they actually want to talk to you more about that.
I would love to give an opinion on this. So, at least, I think, first of all, as just a general rule, these kind of 60 to 80 page business plans are completely unnecessary. You might smile, but I'm still amazed at how many companies
Do you actually get them?
Yeah, absolutely. These enormously long business plans, which I just feel are a waste of a startup's time. And by the time that they finish this 80 pages of documentation on a startup, their startup and the market's probably changed too. So I would advise against that as a starting point. I think secondly, just when you're approaching a VC, you should be prepared. You should have all the information that they might want to ask. But you should look at it like almost like you're dating. On a first date, you're not going to arrive at the dinner having just met this person and tell them every single thing about you all at once. It would be too overwhelming, and they don't want to know that your mom is going to be a really difficult mother for them. You save some of that information for later. It's kind of just like, I guess, teasing them into this. You want to get them excited. You want to get them just as much information so that they get excited and want to know more. I think the way a lot of the investors and VCs in particular work is that you're innocent until proven guilty. But the problem is that the VC or the investor is the chief prosecutor. So they're looking for reasons as to how they can decide on you as quickly as possible. And so at the beginning, it's a lot harder to break up with somebody if you're already in love with them. And so I would say you want to ease an investor in, not just give a huge data dump of tons of information at once. At least that's the way I would view it.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Will. John, how about you? What are you looking for when they apply to TechStars?
So I support everything that Will has just said. It's probably something, because we make our decisions exceptionally quickly, and the bit that gets my attention is I love playing with product. So the faster that somebody can actually demonstrate a product or put a product in front of me, the more interested I become, because it has lots of different things that come with that. One is you get to really understand how someone thinks and how somebody sets a product up. Demonstrates their commitment, so it's not just an idea, they've actually done something. And it also means that you can actually have really relevant conversations about, so why did you do that? How did you do that? So I'm a really strong believer in if somebody sends me an invitation to look at the product, I will probably be engaged longer in playing around with the product than I will with a business plan or presentation.
That's perfect. Thank you. Conor, do you have anything to add, or you pretty much agree with everything said?
I agree with all what the guys said. I think the other part of it is a clear, concise deck, preferably with some data points in it. Obviously spelling out the vision and where this could go. But something that can help very, very well is if you are testing the market, you can test the size of that market. It's how it can respond to your product, what sort of early traction you could get, and that very evidence can actually prove a lot of the assumptions that you're making in a deck, or improve some of them. So someone who's thinking about that and has got a good grasp of that comes across quite well for me. The best pitch I ever got was a company who said we have a cost per acquisition of €60 for a business customer, and we have a lifetime value of 25,000. So that one line sort of made me just jump out of my chair and go, okay, who's this person? I have to talk to them. So there are ways of actually really communicating. Everyone is kind of time poor, so you've got to get your message across in a very concise, meaningful way. And if you can, the more data you have behind it, I think the better as well.
Thank you. I think we're running short on time. Just in the interest of not to waste any more your precious time, I want to thank you very much for your time with us, and I really appreciate that you spend this time with guys and tell them about that. There's one more thing I want you to learn, because it's not that every day 50 guys from Russia in the middle of nowhere, that's how they call this place in Siberia, speak to you. I want to learn one Russian, to teach you one Russian word with the help of my guys here. And I want to say thank you to you in Russian with the help of my friends, and let me just do it in a quick and concise way.
Ребята, давайте все дружно скажем спасибо, что вы напомнили, как говорится, громко спасибо. Спасибо!
I hope you heard that. That's thank you in Russian. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, guys. See you.